Yeah.
Good morning. Welcome to the Country Club for the 122nd U.S. Open Championship. My name is Beth Major, Managing Director of Communications for the USGA, and on behalf of everyone at the USGA and the Country Club, we are thrilled to have you with us this week. This is a special place, and this promises to be a special week. I'm pleased to welcome this morning USGA President Stu Francis on the left, USGA CEO Mike Whan, and USGA Chief Championships Officer John Bodenhammer. Stu, I'll start with you. There's a lot of exciting things going on at the USGA right now. I'd ask you to offer some few thoughts to get us started this morning.
Sure, thank you, Beth. And it really is an exciting time at the USGA here in 2022. You know, we conduct national championships with global fields, and we've gotten off to a great start in 2022. We had our four-ball championships, both men and women's, earlier, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and they went very, very well, including we conducted our first ever USGA National Championship in Puerto Rico, so that was quite exciting for us and for them. Next, we moved on to the U.S. Women's Open, presented by ProMedica at Pine Needles, and that turned out to just be a fabulous championship. Minjee Lee of Australia won. That was her second USGA championship, and the golf course played well, and the competitors were uniformly excited to be there. After that, we moved to the Curtis Cup at Marion in Philadelphia, and it was just a great competition and a long legacy of almost 100 years of Curtis Cups that have taken place. The USA team won resoundingly. They played great golf, and I think it really displayed the fact that we have some very talented young women in the United States who are making their mark on the global scale in golf. So that was terrific for us. And now here we are at the Country Club for the 122nd U.S. Open. We are so excited to be here. This club was one of the 5 founding clubs of the USGA. It's conducted 17 USGA championships, the second most of all clubs. And the golf course is just in spectacular condition. It really is a great, great place. The players seem to be uniformly excited about it, and we're very, very pleased to be here. You know, we do have real excitement at the USGA, as I just highlighted, and frankly, one of the key reasons we have it is the gentleman to my left, Mike Whan. When we formed our search process and search committee for the next CEO, and Mike joined us about a year ago, our thinking was we want our next CEO to have aggressive new thinking about golf and about everything the USGA can do, and also to be very well known and highly respected in the golf industry so he could hit the ground running. Well, he hit the ground sprinting, and I've been scrambling to keep up with him ever since then. But he's a great leader. Mike calls probably 3 or 4 times a day with new ideas, and some of them we decide we will go ahead, some we don't, but he's a fountain of ideas, and I think the excitement we have is palpable. The other point I'd make is we really have a clear view now as to what our long-term strategic priorities are to really build this game, grow this game, and have it thrive in the future 50 and 100 years from now. So with that, Mike, we all thank you. We're all excited, and I'll cede the podium.
Well, thank you. I didn't realize that was the job criteria. I thought you were looking for somebody highly caffeinated, and I qualified. Well, thanks, everybody. I think I know pretty much everybody in the room, but if you know me, when I started at the LPGA, the first thing I did is went and met with some of our living founders. I wanted to get back to the roots so we could talk about what to build from there. And there's a significant amount of responsibility you feel when you walk into the USGA for the first time. 127 years of history. And, you know, again, sometimes you got to stop and think 127 years ago, you know, before there were professional tours, before there was a PGA of America, air travel, before there was TV. Sorry, my friends at NBC and Peacock. And so you sort of take on this responsibility. And so one is to make sure we understood the vision that was formed in December of 1894. And as Fred's heard me say, and as Stu's heard me say, and the rest of the board, and certainly JB is sick of me saying, we've got to be as bold a visionary for the next 100 years as the group was for the last 100 years. I find every time I sit on a plane with these letters on my chest, everybody knows we're golf. Hey, USGA, I golf. And they want to tell you about their scores and the ruling that they most recently disliked. But then about halfway into that plane conversation, they'll look at you and go, what is it you guys do again? And I said this to Stu about 6 months ago. We're a 127-year-old brand with an awareness problem. And I'm floored that a lot of people don't really understand the different things that the USGA does. And I've sat at my shared dinner parties and listened to some of my teammates try to explain it too. So unfortunately, that mouse pad that you received when you got here, that Unify, Showcase, Govern, and Advance, that was me. I apologize, but that's how we're really going to, internally, we changed United States Golf Association into Unify, Showcase, Govern, and Advance. And the way we think about that is we spend about $12 million a year unifying this game. World handicapping system that used to be 10 countries, now 118. The GIN app, where they're putting in GIN on your watch now, and course ratings. All of that, again, sometimes I think all of us who follow this game take it for granted that I could get off the plane in Thailand, tee it up with an 87-year-old woman and a 14-year-old boy, and we could all exchange handicaps with that course rating and play the game. I mean, try that in baseball or football. I don't know how you'd actually bring together, but the sport is unified because of the way the USGA and the RNA work together to unify the sport. We believe in showcasing name. There's 15 national championships. I'm glad that you're all at this one. I'm glad that so many of you were in Pine Needles, but you might miss the other 13. It could be men, women, boys, girls. It could be professional, amateur. It's team and individual. And starting this year in July, it's disabled as well. So we're really excited, again, about the ability in this sport to be able to say, if you're having your best golf of your life at age 63, there's a championship for you. If you're having the best golf of your life at 12, and if you're having your best golf of your life with your buddy, it can happen, and we'll showcase that. We'll put you on a stage bigger than you've seen before. I think we govern the game. You certainly know we govern the game because you've commented about it over the years, and so have I. John knows I've commented when I was at the LPGA. But thankfully, between the USGA and the RNA, we all play by one common set of rules. Whether we're talking about equipment testing and those standards, whether we're talking about rules of the game, amateur status. I'm really proud of what the USGA and the RNA do to make sure, again, no matter where we play and how we play, we all play by the same rules. Not a given in every other sport that happens around the world. The last thing that I've really probably harped on the most, and these guys will roll their eyes, is the A, and what we call advance, which is I'm really excited to learn about a 102-year-old green section. I knew there was a green section, but if I was being honest with you, I couldn't have described it before. But it started 102 years ago when Inverness called us in. At the same time, they called in the Department of Agriculture from the U.S. government and said, help us. We've got a problem on our course. And 102 years later, even when the government bounced out, we stayed in. And so whether it's agronomy and research and nutrient needs, we spent over $50 million since we started that program. And now we're on a clip to spend close to $2 and $2.5 million a year to further that research. And I'm proud of that, and I'm really proud of the green section. But I've challenged our executive committee and our team to think bigger about advance. I use the term BBLs a lot, and so you'll get sick of hearing me talk about this, but big, bold leadership initiatives. What are we going to do over the next 15, 30, and 40 years to leave this game better? And they're all, as Stu will probably admit, and probably scared that I'm about to talk about this, they're all forming. They're not formed, but they're forming. One of them we're kind of gently calling 15, 30, 45. In the next 15 years, what if we committed $30 million to reduce how much water a golf course needs by 45%? If we set out to have that kind of big, bold leadership initiative, one staff member said to me, Mike, what if we can't get to 45? And I said, I'll be happy to sit up here and apologize if we only reduce water needs by 30% in the next 15 years. But if we don't do that, who is? And if we don't do that, what's golf going to look like west of the Mississippi long term? So we really feel like that's a goal we need to take on, and we need to be big and bold enough to hang it on the wall and challenge ourselves every quarter when we get together as a board of directors. We're, as most of you know, I think at least in this room, we're going to start a program that's a U.S. development team. As a commissioner of the LPGA for 12 years, I was floored by the fact that almost every woman who plays on that tour came out of a country program unless she came out of America, where she didn't come out of a country program. And the Olympics threw that into hyperspeed because a lot of countries have what they call podium sports. And if it's a podium sport, they invest in it as a government, and if they don't, it's not. And what I've seen change across the world because the Olympics is really powerful, but it hasn't changed us here in the States. So we're gonna work with other organizations that already exist and create a program from age 12 until a minimum 17 and maybe longer to make sure that the best young boys and girls in this country have a pipeline to play. And if you can't afford to raise a professional golfer, then we're going to step in and help you raise that professional golfer. And if that golfer just makes it to college or just plays high school golf, that's fine, because there'll be people like us that really thought we had a career in this game, and then turned out to be the career in this game was different. And I don't have a suntan line on my left hand from a glove, but I still work in this game full time. And so we really believe that the USGA's role is to build a USA development program to make sure the pipeline of US golfers here is not about where you grew up, it's not about how much money your mom or dad makes, it's not about what country club sponsored you, it's about whether or not you have the talent, the interest, and the dedication to be part of a Team USA program. We hired Dr. Mateo from the University of California, Riverside to come in and be our head of the 15th 30-45 program. Dr. Mateo is a PhD in plant and environmental sciences, so I can literally not talk to him, but I've tried. But we really need somebody to guide us on that project. And as some of you may or may not know, we recently hired Heather Daly Donofrio, who was the former Chief Tour Operations Officer at the LPGA, and she's going to lead our USA development program. So these are things we're going to get serious about. Some of you in the room know this because I've already found you and got a check from you. But in the next year, we're going to raise $10 million through individual donations, match that with our own money at the USGA, and endow the Walker and Curtis Cup to make sure that no matter what happens economically, what happens to sport, what happens to the USGA, those amateur championships can never go away. We're going to put that money in the bank. I've always worried as a CEO that the next time we have an economic turn for the worse, I'm going to go, gosh, it cost $2.5 million to run a Walker Cup. What if we did it every 4 years? And in a bad time, these guys might say yes. So if we can endow those things and make sure that I can't mess that up. So those are 3 of what will probably be 5 or 6 BBL, big, bold leadership initiatives. I brought a lot of note cards here, and so far I've said nothing of what I came to talk to you about. But I'll just finish with a couple other thoughts. In this world of wearing this jacket around, I'm also amazed some points that probably need to be clarified. People will say to me, oh, yeah, USGA, so you must be moving to Pinehurst, which I'm not moving to Pinehurst, but it sure feels pretty good there in February. But I'll just clarify a few things. Pinehurst, what it is and what it isn't. We are going to open a Pinehurst golf house. We're going to move about 50 or 60 of our teammates down there. It will be the head of equipment standard testing starting in 2024. It'll have a good chunk of JB's championship team there and a bunch of other individual functions there. So think of about 60 teammates down in Pinehurst and be part of, this is a home of the USGA, and down there will be a home of, a great home of American golf as well. Another thing that I find that is misconstrued a bit is anchor sites. What is it, what isn't it? Anchor sites is not the beginning of the USGA Roto, although some like that idea, some don't. What it is a chance for us to work with a few locations that we know we're going to be back a lot over the next 20 and 30 years. What happens a lot at the USGA is we'll leave a place like the country club. Next month, we'll all come in and we'll have a debriefing and we'll say, gosh, if we could do it all over again, you know what we would have done? And then we all write that down. Nobody does anything and everybody goes home. And so when we go to some of those sites to be able to have that debriefing meeting and say, let's go do that. Let's go do that. Some of the local states, counties, and cities are involved in helping us invest to make these championships even more doable in terms of having more fans, more TV coverage, more access for the players and caddies. So anchor sites are about making investments long-term into making greater championships and knowing that those will be the place. The other things that I don't want you to miss when you read an anchor site agreement is look at what else they're hosting, not just the US Open. Anchor sites, in our mind, are partners across the board. U.S. Women's Opens, amateurs, juniors, disabled events. We really want to find places that want to not only host the biggest, but really host the best in every aspect of the game. These are going to be partners of ours long term. When we talk about this USA Development Program, I expect us to bring 300 of the best 14-year-olds to Pinehurst for a week. And then the next year, we're going to bring them to Pebble. And maybe after that, they'll be at Oakland Hills. But expect to see us working with those partners to help build the pipeline of American golf. The last thing I'll say is on distance. I'm surprised and quite frankly, strangely caught off guard by how few people kind of understand where we are on the distance project. And we've been pretty clear about it, but there's been something else in professional golf that seems to have taken a lot of attention away. So I just want to make sure that people understand. We have a slow, deliberate, and I'd say slow, I know my team doesn't like me to say that word, but it's slow and it's deliberate and it's designed to make sure we don't sneak up on anybody. And trust me when I say we're not sneaking up on anybody. It's designed to make sure we have to stop at every step and actually create a listening period. So before the pandemic, we talked about the Distance Insight survey and how we were really going to attack distance, but we talked about it in 15 different ways. In March of this year, we came to the media and to the manufacturers and said, we're really focused on two potential areas. How we'll look at testing golf balls, using essentially the same testing method we do today, but updating that testing method to really replicate the speeds of today's game. And quite frankly, we haven't done that since 2004. So those speeds and the way we test weren't representative of today's game. And at the same time, looking at a driver that might be something that we only have as a model local rule that would reduce how much spring effect is on the face and reduce some of the size of the sweet spot, meaning greater reward for center hits and greater disincentive, quite frankly, for missing the center of the club. We couldn't figure out a way to do that on a golf club and not negatively affect the retail market. So we looked at that as more of a model local rule to be put in play in an elite competition. At the same time, we talked about doing those two things. I don't want to miss something else. We've actually talked about removing some of the other tests that have been in place for a long time. One is called initial velocity out of a golf ball, and the other is the limitation of how big a sweet spot can be. We're potentially analyzing removing those two tests. And the benefit of that is, we think if we removed that, there's a potential, not a guarantee, but a potential that'll free up some innovation space for the manufacturers to create a ball that would actually be better for low club speeds, to be better for beginners, to be better for my father. Sorry, Dad, if you're listening. I just really took a shot at my dad. But actually give the manufacturers a little bit of freedom. At the same time, on a golf club, if we freed up a little bit more space in sweet spot, maybe we could create even more forgiving golf clubs. And so at the same time, we're trying to address distance at the highest level. We also want to make sure we respect what's happening in the retail side of this game and the recreation game, and not only enjoy it, but potentially maybe even fuel it a bit. And so now we're stopped. We're in a 5-month listening period, so everybody can tell us everything they like and dislike about that. And about this time next year, we'll be telling you about where we stemmed from there. I'm frothing, so I can tell you I talked a lot. But I'm going to flip it over to JB, who I want to say thank you. The 3 J's of course setup, Jason, Jeff, and John allowed me to come out and they said, "You want to be part of setup this morning?" Not realizing that setup starts at 5:05, so I'll be asleep in about an hour. But it was really enjoyable to walk with them. I'll just say to all of you, and I'll say it again probably when we're on NBC with a trophy, but what's really cool about this place is when you think about 122 playings ago, or 127 years, we had 11 competitors in the first US Open. By the way, from 3 countries, none of which were from the United States. And to think about now, 9,300 people trying to get into this event. They came from every one of our 50 states and 80 countries. When they got together back then, they played 4 loops on a 9-hole course at Newport, 36 holes for the Open, with the winner walking away with $150. They played for a purse of $335. This week, 9,300, 50 states, 80 countries, took 109 qualifiers in 44 different states, 3 different countries to get here. We really believe that you made the cut if you're here. I've said this to the women a couple weeks ago at Pine Needles. You make the cut to get into this. This is the hardest event in the world to get in. So if you're here, you ought to feel pretty special. And this week we'll play for $17.5 million, with the winner walking away with $3.15 million in a winner's check. While there's a lot of things that have changed, we're still going to be playing for that gold medal, now the Nicklaus medal, and the same trophy. So an amazing evolution in this championship, but at its heart, it's been around here longer than any of us, longer than most other organizations in the game. It's open, and as JB says all the time, the golf ball doesn't care where you're from, how old you are, or how you got here. Can you put the ball in the hole in less strokes than others? So thanks for this time. I promise in the future to froth less and give you a little less, but I'm 1 year in, and if you can't feel my excitement, then shame on you. This is it's an exciting time for a 57-year-old kid who grew up around this game and changing hole locations and cutting greens when he was in high school, because this is, in my mind, this is the greatest sport in the world, and I'm really happy to be a part of this sport. JB?
Well, thank you, Mike. I have to confess, I'm a Seattle native, and Starbucks is my thing in the morning. But with Mike on board, I've drank more Coke Zero than I ever have before. He's a joy to work with, inspiring, big, bold leadership ideas. I think all of us at the USGA feel like we're on a very positive trajectory, and it's all part of the celebration of this week, the 122nd U.S. Open. Thank you for joining us and being with us. I'd like to share just a few thoughts about that celebration that is the Open, and here at a very special place. You know, this Open almost didn't happen, and there's a number of stories behind that, but Prior to 2013 in the U.S. Amateur here, we didn't think we could conduct a U.S. Open here. The footprint was small. It was in a residential community. There were just too many hurdles to overcome in what we do and what you see out there now. But conducting the U.S. Open at Marion Golf Club in 2013 changed our perspective. And when we came here for the Amateur in 2013, we thought that coming back to Brookline was possible. I remember walking the golf course with Mike Davis, seeing a little drop-down hole number 11 and thinking what could be possible and thinking big and thinking creatively. And it's going to unfold in an amazing way at an amazing place that goes right back to our very roots. You know the stories. You know, as Mike mentioned and Stu mentioned, a founding member club, and we all know about Francis we met in 1913. But think about these couple of things that relate to what's about to unfold here and what really happened in 1913 and a few years, a few Opens after that. They actually delayed the U.S. Open until September of 1913 so Harry Vardon and Ted Ray could play. And what they did was monumental. Really what we met did, think about it. It boils down to one statistic I heard a few weeks ago. In the population of our country in 1913 in the United States, think about it, it was about maybe a little more than what is half of what is now. There were 350,000 golfers in our country. 2 years after we met Whan, there were over 2.1 million golfers in this country. What he did and what he stirred and being on the front page of sports pages all across the country changed the face of the game in this country. Gene Sarazen, I heard this story just this last week, was here and witnessed what We Met did. And it was almost like a 4-minute mile moment. If Francis can do it, I can do it. And he did later. And it really opened up the floodgates later in really inspiring American golf. You think about this place, and it's old. It's old. It doesn't really have an architect. The members, there were a handful of members that laid out 6 holes here in 1892. A year later, they hired a Scottish professional, Willie Campbell, who came in and blew up the 6 holes and built 9 holes. And the opening of that course, there was, I believe, maybe the club president or leadership of the club. They played the first hole and he made a 1. Knocked it right in the hole. Next shot, pulled it left. Next shot, hit it right. And everybody started to walk away. Well, this guy's no good. He made the first one. He can't make anything else. There are lots of those stories here. We'll play this week at par 70, a little bit longer than 7,200 yards each day, but it's more important than that. What you'll see on this golf course is an ebb and flow like nowhere else. The first 4 holes, buckle up. You're going to have to really golf your ball. You get into 5 through 9, you better get it then, because when you make the turn and you go to number 10, we mailed it in. It's only 499-yard par 4, the Himalayas, but it is fabulous. You play 10 through 18, it's going to be a good old-fashioned U.S. Open test. And when you get past 10 and you come to a couple of special holes after that, a hole that we love, and I think it will be a focal point of the championship by what happens, is number 11. It's a little drop-down par 3. It'll play at the most 140 yards, and we'll move it around a little bit. But it's a hole that everybody in the game can relate to. A little 140, 30, 120 yard, maybe even 2 digits one day that we'll drop down to in playing that hole. Everybody can relate to this hole. And what Gil Hans did in restoring that little green, that upside-down cereal bowl, and what'll happen around there with our plan, I think you'll see some special things happen. That hole was used in 1913. It was not used in 1963 or 1988. We're proud to put it back in the rotation here. We took out the club's 4th hole. We rerouted things a little bit. It is a new routing, but that little 11th hole will be something special. In 1913, Francis we met was playing in the final round. It was wet. He was concerned about dropping a high shot into that green, around that green. So he wanted to hit, I guess in the day, in 1913, it was the 1913 version of the Stinger. He took out his jigger and tried to hit a low line shot into that green and chunked it about 20 yards off the tee, wedged it on the green, and 3-putted. Think about that. Double bogey 5. He walked off that green, and there was a fan that had come out to watch and said, "Oh, what a marvelous run. It's sad that it's all but over." And we talked about how that inspired him to go on and win later and make the playoff or finish into a playoff with Varden and Ray the next day and ultimately win. It really inspired him. And really, you think about it, Varden and Ray finished earlier on that last day. They came out and watched Ouimet play. And on 16, there's a famous story that folks around here tell where Ouimet had knocked his first shot on that little green on 16, the par 3, knocked it 9 feet by. And Varden and Ray are out watching. He made that 9-footer, and Varden was known to shout out in appreciation for what Ouimet did. He was even rooting for what this young American was about to achieve that day here at the Country Club. I think if you think of one hole, and I promise you something magical will happen on number 17 here at the Country Club. It just has to. You think about the history. 1913, Varden doubled it in the last round. Ouimet birdied it. He birdied it in the playoff. In 1963, Arnold Palmer missed a 2-footer. Jackie Cupid drove it left, wedged it short, and pitched it up and 3-putted for a double bogey. Tony Lima double bogeyed 17 to miss the playoff by 1, and Julius Boros birdied it to get into the playoff. It's bound to happen. Curtis Strange in 1988 3-putted from 10 feet above the hole on that upper plateau the last day. And even the U.S. Amateur, Jay Sigel beat my college teammate Rick Fair by making a 45-footer from the lower level up top to win his back-to-back U.S. Amateur. Something's going to happen on 17 this week. I don't know what it'll be, but that's the magic of the Country Club, and there's just so much more here. What's really great about this place are these little tiny putting greens. You look at what's out there with most of them, you're going to have to drive your ball in the fairway with the rough that's here, and you're going to have to be a great iron player to keep your ball on these firm and little tiny putting greens. Francis Ouimet said in playing this golf course well, it takes a lot of knowing. So those that have done their homework, some came in early, months ago, last week, I think it'll pay dividends as they play the Country Club. We're very proud of a couple of other things we're doing this week. I'll touch on them briefly. If you want to talk a little bit more about the golf course, Jeff Hall of my team and Jason Gore, the 3 J's, as Mike says, we're happy to talk with you afterwards. We'll give you all the details, but there's some other things that are happening we're proud of. Sustainability is very important to the town of Brookline, to the USGA, and to the Country Club, and we've embraced that. This will be our most sustainable U.S. Open to date, and I would argue our consultants from Waste Management that have come in and helped us design this, the most sustainable and eco-friendly championship in the game this year. We'll do it in 3 areas. We'll reduce our footprint of significant energy and fossil fuel conservation measures that we're taking throughout the championship. We'll divert things that normally go to landfills through recycling and dramatic reduction of single plastics. We'll use over 500,000 less plastic water bottles through the use of aluminum recyclables.
And we'll be turning off the air conditioning in the media center starting today.
Yeah, so my pages don't blow away. We'll renew. It'll be a time of renewal as well with the town of Brookline and insets that we'll embark on with the community. 144 trees that we'll plant in this community to 128 trees to signify 128 years of the USGA. That will make up a big part of the community's